When you finish creative work, what you want to do is wash the dishes, go outside, play with your kids, something where your brain doesn't have to be hyper-focused. That actually will activate your reticular activating system, and it will continue doing creative problem solving on your behalf while you're doing the rest of your day. But you can't do that if you're flooding your brain with new inputs.
All right, so we are just going to dive right in. So I actually know how to say your name correctly now, even though I've known you for how many years and I say it differently all the time. So, Lieve, can you explain to me why you got into this work? Can we talk a little bit about your thyroid diagnosis? Can we learn a little bit about what prompted you to start doing this?
Yes, it's crazy. It takes me so way back, but I just found that I was completely losing my energy when I started my career and entered the workforce. The expectations entering the workforce right during the recession, right out of college, were seemingly impossible for me. I felt like there was something broken or wrong with me. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to have a career like a normal person. So I was working at a fast-paced consulting firm in Midtown Manhattan, and I was expected to get there at 7 a.m. to send out a whole suite of reports before 8 a.m. when the partners came in. And often what would happen is at 5 p.m. when the partners wanted to leave, they would put a whole bunch of things that were due by the end of the night onto my desk, my to-do list, that also needed to be completed by 8 a.m. the next day. So it was a very long work hours that were pretty standard. We had meetings on Saturdays and Sundays regularly. I'll never forget.
Whoa.
There was one time we had a team celebration meeting, a dinner that was scheduled to start Friday at midnight. That was mandatory. And in the hustle and bustle, I know, Friday at midnight, I will never get over it. Just in the hustle and bustle, I was completely losing all of my energy and completely drained. I had a very strict diet, was working out all the time, every lunch break, and I was gaining weight because my thyroid was off, as you know. So it was one of those things where I felt like I was doing all the right things, and that's why I felt I was broken. And it really opened my eyes to needing to address chronic stress that in that work environment had certainly become normalized. There weren't a lot of women. I was very male heavy in a male dominated workforce. So that level of adrenaline and stress that was serving the men really was not serving me.
Yeah, we kind of live on two different hormone cycles there. But that's insane. I'm just thinking realistically, how many people burn out in that situation? Because how can you do your work all day and then at 5 p.m. when you should be clocking out, be dumped with all of this other stuff that have to have ready by 8? It's how does your family even, how do you survive? But how does that's not really conducive, I guess, for a family. I was there would be nobody else in your life because you're sorry, all I have time for is my computer.
Yeah, exactly. It was very depressing, to be honest, but I'm so grateful that I went through that gauntlet so early in my career and so young, because it did really help me figure out how to find these better serving habits to be able to work and be productive. But what actually happened before I figured out my Hashimoto's diagnosis, I started as a result of this chronic cortisol and stress all the time, getting a cluster headache almost every day at 2 p.m. And that's when I really had to dive into the research of work performance and time management and planning, because all of a sudden my job was completely on the line and I had to be twice as productive as everyone else in order to keep my job, because I knew that after 2 p.m., I was not sure if I was going to be able to do anything, really.
That's crazy. So my health brain over here, my health nerd is just oh my goodness, I feel like there's so many people that are sitting in that area, right? And then we go to more coffee, we go to more caffeine, probably ibuprofen or aspirin. even though your body is just like, I am so stressed, but we just have to keep pushing through for whatever. Not that we have to keep pushing through, but we think that we do. So I think that kind of takes me into the next question I want to ask you is like, what do you do? Like when you're in that situation, because we have so many women who are like, I will never balance my hormones, Leah, because I like have a stressful job. And that's like, period. Like that's their statement of life. So like, what do you do when you're in that situation? Like, where do you turn?
First, I really want to empathize that because I lived in that trap for years, really 6 years until I decided at any and all costs, I was going to prioritize getting my energy back. And I truly put every other area of my life on hold and decided for my personal New Year's resolution, I was going to do just for 1 year, anything and everything I could possibly do to reclaim my energy and get back on track and heal from the headaches and balance my hormones naturally. And it only took me 4 months, actually.
Yeah.
But
See what happens when we prioritize it?
I know. It was amazing. Everything else had to go on pause, but 4 months of really breaking that cycle. And that's the problem. I know you know about this. When your body is used to producing cortisol at a certain time and running on it, it anticipates that and that becomes a habit. And some of the things that I've really been fascinated by learning, Leah, for example, is automatic habits. They take 63 days to become automatic. 63 days. This is by neuroscientist Caroline Leaf, who does these amazing QEED brain scans. That's how long it takes to get automatic. So if I think of those 4 months, it probably took me about 2 months of tweaking and trying different things. And then another 2 months of really having those routines become so unconscious that I was starting to see the benefits in terms of my body's own cortisol patterns, really breaking that pattern and creating a positive pattern. I still had stress, of course, but eustress, good stress, like cortisol in the morning. My adrenals were so shot that I could never wake up in the morning. It would take me like 3 hours, right? And then my cortisol would go way, way high in the afternoon. It takes a long time to do those kinds of resets. So I would really encourage any woman who's listening to take this on and maybe reframe it that it is possible. It just takes prioritizing.
Yeah. Well, and you literally said it. You're like, I made that my priority. I made it my focus. And you literally had to just break a cycle. And okay, the simplicity of that is like XYZ, you need to do it, right? But it is also hard because you're like, okay, the idea sounds great, but like how do I do that? So can you kind of walk us through, like, because you wrote a whole book on this, so you obviously know a lot of things about this. Like, how do we start to lower our stress? How do we become more in flow so that we can become more productive, but maybe lower those stress levels a little bit?
It's such a great question. I actually want to share a fun anecdote. I was at a talk recently, and the presenters asked people in the audience to raise their hand if they had a personal mission for their year, for their life, whatever, just a personal mission. About a third of the people raised their hands. So it was a really like pro personal development audience. Then they asked, how many people review that every day? There were only 4 hands. I'm very proud. One of them was mine. And it was really fun to meet the other people who reviewed that every day. But they had been doing research as well onto high performers and saw that across the board, all of the high performers they interviewed had a mission and regularly reviewed it. And the reason I'm circling this far back is if your mission is that clear, it's so much easier to let your other priorities fall into place, but you have to continue to review it because it also takes time for that to really sink in and for you to, embody it, not just have it be something you hope for or you write down on a page, but you have to continually focus your mind onto that mission and vision so that you can see the fruit. And for me, it also really guided me when I had that mission of seeing if I could defeat the headaches and rebalance everything. It guided me by having an idea of how I wanted to go through the journey. So it wasn't just about an outcome. I kind of released the outcome, Leah. I just thought I'm going to do my best and see if it's even possible. But I did have a mission for the process. I was going to keep showing up, keep prioritizing my energy, and make the process as fun as I possibly could. And that's where you start to really see the shift, because it almost didn't even matter if I got to the outcome or not, as long as I was having fun and lowering my stress levels as much as I could along the way.
Mm-hmm. I literally was just listening to a training before we hopped on here, and it was talking about SMART goals. And they were like, let's say you make a goal to reach XYZ by the end of the year, and maybe you don't hit that exact goal, but like you are a completely different person than you were when you started the year because you were heading in that direction, then you still met the goal. So you can make the goal again and keep continuing on towards that. And the part that you said of like enjoying the journey, like making it fun, that I mean, that's the only way you're going to be consistent with it. Because if you're doing things for your health that you're like, I hate my life, you're probably not going to stick to it, if I had to guess.
No, I have to play devil's advocate with SMART goals, if that's okay. Because SMART goals, if you take a step back and you think of like the theory behind it, they were developed very specifically for business corporate management concept. And that's been a big part of my career, strategic planning consulting. So if you're using SMART goals to motivate employees, you're actually activating those extrinsic motivators, like things that reward systems that are outside of you. Whereas for personal development goals, and almost every single health goal is a personal development goal, you need to activate your intrinsic motivators. A lot of the times they're not captured under SMART goals. Like you said, but those intrinsic motivators, it's having a sense of autonomy, that this is part of your identity and you're in control, right? That you are a healthy person, that you deserve to live with full vibrancy and energy. That's a very personal identity goal. The second one is mastery, that you're able to grow and continue growing and evolving. We didn't get to talk about this yet, but I'm currently training for a triathlon.
Oh, my Lanta.
It's so much fun. A tiny triathlon, just like a short one. But I wanted to master something new, and to grow and to challenge myself and my body. And so it's been really fun and an energizing way to do that. And then the third intrinsic motivator is purpose. There's an acronym for this, AMP.
Okay, perfect. Otherwise, I won't remember it.
Put together the acronym. But you want to have that sense of your why. For me and my health goals personally, my why is that I'm very hopeful I'll be a mom someday. I'm single, so I'm not there yet. But I really want to have that energy to be with my future children. It's really important, that sense of why.
Yeah. So people don't know probably, but you have a sister named Brigitte. And Brigitte and I talk about this a lot. We're like, you need to have energy for your kids because they're like always going. They have an untapped amount of energy. And you have to keep up. So yeah, I love that. Okay. So AMP, I wrote that down. So I can remember this. I feel like this is my own coaching session that we're having here. So, let's say, so you need 63 days, right? To make it, an automatic habit. And you need to, when you're setting your goal, you said you need to come up with the internal motivators, not necessarily the external. So that's figuring out like your why, like why we're doing this. So then let's just say somebody's like Leah a couple years ago, because when I was introduced to you, I heard we set goals for the new year and we are going to be time management queens. And all I heard was schedules. I was like, I have to follow a schedule. Like, how would I ever follow a schedule? And me being the creative that I am was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me because I can't be creative if I have to follow a schedule. And I only had one kid at this time. I only had Landon, goes to the beat of his own drum. So like I have to also follow his schedule. And then I was my mind was very much changed after actually talking to you. And I found that following your formula for time, I don't even know what to call it, time management, time scheduling, I actually was more creative and I got more done and it was just more peaceful. It's just more peaceful. So can you kind of explain like your theory? So like, let's say someone is really stressed and they really want to come out of this, but they also need to be productive, right? You know, they're like, I can't just go live off in the mountains for the next 6 months by myself. I still have to figure out my life. So where do they start? Like, can you share your brainchild?
It's such a beautiful question, a big question, a lot to unpack there. And the reality is we all have time constraints. But the time schedule phenomenon that you just talked about, Leah, really goes all the way back to Henry Ford, who created today's 40-hour work week for an operating plant. And the reason I'm just sharing that context is the creative knowledge work that we do, that most American knowledge professionals in the United States do, or even professionals who are doing other jobs who still have a lot of admin, it totally doesn't relate. And it's important to level set and just validate that a lot of us are operating in this outdated system when it comes to thinking about time management and schedule. Like we're not punching in a clock like a factory worker. And there is at the same time this constraint that we only have so many hours, so much time in the day. But to your point, when it comes to really engaging in deep creative work, a lot of studies show that the absolute maximum is 4.5 hours a day. And when I talk about that maximum, that's like professional violinists or people who are in deep, concentrated, focused work. Most people in the average workday report productive time being about 2 hours and 40 minutes.
What are they doing the rest of the time?
A lot of it is email. So a lot of it is distraction. We've never had so much distraction in just our outside distractors in daily life. Beyond work has increased by 500% in the last 25 years in terms of how much information our brain's receptors are receiving. So when we think about being overwhelmed, there's real data behind that. We're not like computer chips where we can just continually upgrading our processors without having a biological implication. And that's where it can be so freeing as we worked to really look at your schedule and plan ahead. What's your intentionality for making sure that those 2 to 4 hours of focused creative work, or generative work is another way of saying it. You might not think of yourself as a creative person, but that kind of focused, deep work. How are we putting that into your schedule, and how can we have enough spaciousness so that you can flex? Just like Landon, a child, wants to flex, you want to be able to stay inspired and motivated and really enjoy your work.
Yeah. You taught me to write in blank space in my calendar because you were like, well, when would you like move this around if something came up? And I was like, I wouldn't. I can't move anything around ever because everything is back to back. Once I'm done here, I go here. And it was just that was really helpful for me, is actually taking things out of my to-do list, my quote unquote to-do list. And then I ended up on getting more done because I was able to be like, oh, he's actually going to take a nap this time. And so I'm going to move the things that I was going to do at a different time to now. So I know something that you really talk about is like how to really quickly and consistently like get into the zone so that you can be focused on whatever your task you're doing. Because like if you want to reduce your stress and be more productive, like that's awesome if you can actually lower the amount of time that you're having to do XYZ tasks because you just get them done faster. So how do we do that? How do we get into the zone faster?
I love that question. Thank you for asking. And it's not just about reducing stress because you're spending less time working, but just so everyone listening can be aware of this, you get more neurochemical benefit when you're working in the zone than when you're just taking things task by task off your to-do list. So you get other neurochemicals beyond your regular cortisol and adrenaline. That's usually fueling people who are trying to slay through a to-do list. You get anandamide and serotonin and norepinephrine. So it helps to balance your neurochemicals and ultimately reduce like the stress load, which is another benefit of working in the flow or getting in the zone. And my book offers this 3-step framework because the research, from my perspective, on performance psychology has been filled with too many triggers. There are 22 flow triggers. So it distills it into a 3-step process to make it a little more user-friendly. The first part is presence. Really get your body, heart, mind into a state of heart coherence, into the state of how you want to be feeling when doing the work. Do you want to be feeling peaceful, energized, excited? Make sure that you take, could be a 1-minute transition, could be a 10-minute transition, but really center yourself in that correct state for your work so that by the time you focus on your work, you can get through that initial challenge zone and focus and get into the flow more quickly. It's very common, Leah, that the first 5 to 10 minutes of a challenging task are hard. That's just how it is. But the great news is it's only 5 to 10 minutes. So if you can get present, then when you're actually working on the project, it's a lot easier to focus. It's easier for your brain to focus. And another big trick is set your time constraint and know exactly what success looks like, what that purpose is before you start. So don't just go into email and think, okay, now what am I going to do? That's a recipe for disaster. Your brain is thinking, what does the end look like? I don't know where to get started. It's really helpful if before you start your focused work session, you know how long you have, how long, if you want to go over, you can go over before stopping, and are really clear on what success looks like. Does it look like getting started for 100 words? That could be fine. Does it look like having a couple of, an outline of some next steps on a research project? That could also be fine. And then the last piece is recovery. We would never do a workout or weightlifting or anything without a recovery time. Like you were just saying, putting that space in your schedule to recover, to allow for disruption, and to give your brain a break. So it literally can de-stress cognitively by having some ambient activity and not be overtaxed.
What's an ambient activity?
Great question. Anything that is not taking in information. Most people go straight to Instagram scrolling or Facebook or emails right after work. That's just adding additional information into your brain and piling up cognitive overload. When you finish creative work, what you want to do is, wash the dishes, go outside, play with your kids, something where your brain doesn't have to be hyper focused. And that actually will activate your reticular activating system, and it will continue doing creative problem solving on your behalf while you're doing the rest of your day. But you can't do that if you're flooding your brain with new inputs.
Ooh, okay. So that's cool. So it's like you start working on the problem and then, I don't know, you get to wherever you say you're good. But then it's like your brain's working for you while you get to do something else. I mean, I'm going to tell my brain, like, this is what you need to problem solve right now while I go to the dishes.
Have you ever had a shower inspiration?
Oh, 100%.
This is the science behind that. And so a lot of the first third of my book is talking about how can you harness your thought stream, your stream of consciousness. Of course, you can't control that, but you can plant these little seeds. So as you're gardening and doing your dishes and taking your shower, it's coming up with great ideas that are related to what you want to be working on, instead of coming up with all these negative ideas or, self-criticizing or saying, why are you so fat as you're doing a shower? I used to have that inner critic voice all the time. And I didn't like it. I wanted to change it.
Yeah. Well, it's not very motivating to do anything if you're constantly saying, I can never do this. And we work on that so much in the beginning of the hormone reset program, is setting your mind up for success, because a lot of times you've done like every health protocol known to man, and so the only thing that you have ingrained in you right now is that I don't stick to things. I can't follow through. Nothing works for me. And when we can retrain that, you can stick to things. You just maybe didn't have the right support before or whatever it is. So really reframing that is so important. So you say something that kind of niggles my brain in the wrong way, because I love checking things off. But I know that you say that to-do lists are not the thing. I need to do something else. So tell me what I should do, because I do still like checking things off.
So I love checking things off too. And there's a reason for that. When you check something off, you get that little dopamine hit. But the problem with modern life is it's like seductive to be checking off all the little things that don't really matter.
Oh.
And then you don't check off those big, hard things. So that's where I encourage using a weekly to-do list instead of a daily to-do list, and using a day map so that you are more strategic. You're starting by doing your planning, not just making some pie in the sky to-do list that honestly sets most people up for disappointment and failure at the end of the day, because they never finish the to-do list. So instead, you're starting with your real time constraints in mind and scheduling things out on a daily basis to make those decisions up front of what is success going to look like for today. And that helps. It helps you be strategic, because you have to prioritize what's really important. And I like people to encourage them to visualize what is that most important task, maybe the task that will help them get the farthest, that they would normally procrastinate until the end of the day. And after you do that, check it off, get that dopamine hit, but you're rewiring your brain to give you the dopamine reward for the activities that are going to make the most difference.
So I guess maybe I kind of do this. So I have a note section in my phone where I have the running, this needs to be done this week. And then I will prioritize based on the day which slots in there need to be done. So I have a to-do list, but it's not a two-day list. It's a 2-week list. So that kind of makes sense. So it sounds like maybe you're talking more. Is it time blocking? Is that what it's called? Kind of where you put the tasks together that flow together better?
Yes. So time blocking or batching is another beautiful example where you're putting things together, and sometimes you're stacking good habits. But what I love about your example, Leah, is you even just shared, right? When you're zooming out and planning a week at a time instead of caught in a daily to-do list, you can be much more strategic. And instead of realizing almost every day you have to run out and go do an errand, it's easier in the beginning of the week to see, okay, I have a couple of errands. I can batch these together on Tuesday.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. There is some, things I have to do every single day. I don't bother putting them on there because they're like automatic at this point. But I will say, if I ever am reaching the end of my day and I personally feel like I didn't get anything accomplished, even though like my kids are alive and they're fed and they're clothed and everybody ate, I will write those things down. I'll be like, the kids ate, and I will check it off just to give myself a dopamine. I'm just like, yes, I did that. Yes, I did. It's so important because I don't want to go to bed being like, you didn't get anything done, because I did. I did, even if it wasn't necessarily what I had initially planned to get done.
Can I just validate that a little bit? Because one of the practices I do really encourage is at the end of the day, ideally at least an hour before bedtime, looking back over your day map and re-visualizing very quickly those moments that you're grateful for, everything that you actually did accomplish, and celebrating it and letting yourself really rewire the joyful, happy memories of what you did. Because so often, first of all, if you don't take time to kind of close out the day, it's very common that as soon as your head hits the pillow, it's the first time your brain has had some quiet all day, and it will just, your cortisol levels will spike. You'll think of all the open loops and the things that you didn't get done and all the things that are piling up. And pretty soon you won't be able to get good sleep. You won't be able to get restful sleep. But then we also have this negativity bias that each of us needs to manage in our brain, where we need to spend extra time reinforcing the joyful moments, the things that are making you super mom, that really do matter. We have to spend a little bit of extra time to really solidify those memories.
Yeah, because then we make more of them. I don't do that an hour before bed. I literally probably do that like 7 minutes before bed. So maybe I should move that practice up a little bit. That's literally like the last thing I do. I'm like, brush my teeth, do whatever I need to do, change, do my skincare. And then I sit on the bed with my journal and I'm like, do. And then I go to sleep. So maybe I should rearrange my practice. Okay. I have some more questions. So we have like traditional, goal setting, and then we have Lieve's goal setting. So can you kind of I feel like wrap this up for people, because, they're like, okay, I want less stress. I want to be more productive. I want to start, incorporating this, and, we know how to set good goals. So how are they going to do that following your system? So like, how can we set it and start, basically? I mean, step one, buy your book, because then like you are saying that you're going to follow through with this, but in reality, what do we actually need to do besides buy your book?
Thank you for the plug for my book. It's been really fun, and it does have a deeper dive into the goal setting methodology. But I actually wrote the book to be kind of choose your own adventure, so that you can pick just one chapter that will really make a difference in your life. And it's designed around 9 different ways of experiencing more joyful time management. So if you feel like you need more energy, there's a whole chapter on energy. There's another great chapter on play, which was something that was really important for me to feel and bring into my workday to be more creative. But then stepping back to answer your real question about the goals, to harness all of your intrinsic motivators and, give people a shortcut, I use core goals instead of SMART goals. And the CORE acronym stands for character-based. The O stands for outside your comfort zone. The R is for realistic. And then the E is embodied. And so what I encourage people to do is just for 90 days, because that will give you a month to really dial in on what's the right strategy. And then those 2 additional months to make it an automatic habit, meaning your subconscious is pursuing the goal for you. So we don't have to worry about tracking it anymore, like you said. And then at the end of 90 days, you can see what worked, what didn't work, and kind of reevaluate. But the character-based goals really speaks to the importance of, like you were sharing, Leah, getting your identity, like making this part of your new identity. So often what happens when you make the transition in your mind from a goal that's like, maybe someday it would be great to work on my health, and then you actually decide, okay, my goal is to exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes, let's say. You're making that part of your identity. And so there can be a cognitive dissonant gap because I'm not yet proving to myself that I'm able to work out 3 times a week for 30 minutes. That's a gap. And that gap is painful. I mean, people feel it like a physical pain. So that's very, very normal. And it's often what keeps people stuck and procrastinating subconsciously in the very early get starting period. So to have a little shortcut on that, make it an identity goal. Part of my own personal health goal is I just decided I'm an athlete. And that's why I show up to my workouts, because I am an athlete. And so to be congruent with that identity character statement, I need to be working out. But it gives you a mental shortcut to make that faster. And then there's the out of your comfort zone piece keeps that sense of challenge. But it's really funny, Leah. Research actually shows that you only need to be challenging yourself about 4% higher than your current ability level. So don't set wild pie in the sky goals unless that really motivates you. Just think of like, what's a little incremental improvement, maybe in my meal prepping, or in, one meal. Could I improve like my lunches? Could I make those really healthy and on point? That keeps it realistic, which helps you see the path forward. And then that final part of the goal, the E, the embodied, is really about understanding your why. So for me, again, in my triathlon training goal, it is about having more energy. And I want to make sure that I'm feeling that state of energy in my body before I go out and train, right? That also helps me not overtrain and feel taxing, but I want to get into that positive embodied state and enjoy that while I'm doing the goal. So you're not sacrificing an outcome for enjoying the process.
Well, that was awesome, because I feel like no matter what your goal is there, I think sometimes when we hear all of these things like how to set goals and how to be more productive, we get so caught up in like, maybe you're not a business owner. Maybe you don't work in corporate. This doesn't apply to me. I'm a mom. Well, everything she just said, you can apply to your mom life too, and your health. And I think that is important. I heard someone say this, that, as a mom, you are the CEO of your home.
Oh.
And when we look at it that way, it definitely shifts like how we set goals and how we manage things, because we are the CEO. So, how we want to do it, we do it. So I know I already shared this in the intro, but you can definitely get Lieve's book, The Joyful Flow Formula. I'm going to put it in the show notes. But then also, like, is there any lasting words you want to share with us, or where can people find you? All of the things.
A couple of things. First, if you want a shortcut to achieve your goals, get a group. And I know, Leah, you are really great at the support, but that really helps having the social dynamic. You're going to be getting oxytocin, when you meet and have accountability. There are some really cool mirror neurons effects, which you can read about in the book, that help accelerate new habit formation and getting your goals. So I really want to affirm that. Second, shameless plug, but what I've learned about self-publishing, Leah, is really the algorithm is all about reviews. So I would love it if you want to support me or any other author, go out and leave reviews. I've been leaving reviews like crazy once I learned this piece about the algorithm for all the books that I've read where I hadn't left a review, because it's so, so helpful, much more helpful than anything else that you can do. And then I have also on my website ways where you can reach out. And I work with a lot of moms who are ready to just have the space and the partnership to kind of redesign not only their schedule, as you shared, but really the whole flow of the time schedule for their household, which is so important. And to get the patterns in place so it can flow, and that there can regularly be time for, time for moms to focus, time for moms to work out and incorporate all these healthy habits. And I just want to share, I think what you're doing is truly super women. I want to be just like you when I grow up, and how I manage my flow and my times and really lead the tone for the household.
Thank you. And thanks for coming on.